I'm keeping the 80s and I'm keeping it super muscular, but it's not He-Man. Hello toy fans, I'm here with another one of my top 5s, and this time I'm looking at 5 muscular toy lines I have in my collection where the figures were essentially like knockoffs of He-Man without it being He-Man, and they all come from the 80s. And there were a ton of knockoffs, and some of which I don't have, and some of which I have one, but he's broken, so I really don't want to pull him out. But I'm looking at 5 of the ones that I happen to really like, along with their toy manufacturers, and maybe a little bit of history about them. So what do you say? You want to get started? Alright, so my number 5, it comes from 1986. The toy manufacturer is Hip Lang, and the toy line was called Ninja and His Masters. These guys right here. Normally they came with clothes. All the way from 1986, you got Ninja and His Master. Not one of them is Ninja, not one of them is Master, or the combat specialist, or combat masters. It's kind of all over the place. I was actually looking for packaging for these because everywhere I looked, it's like, it's got an actual hang-yip, manufacturing note on it, and it's from 1986, and lots of people are doing this, but I couldn't find anything other than most of the time just naked figures. Now there are a few that show that sometimes these pants pieces are in gray. I know on this one I saw one where it was gray and the rest was kind of this skin tone up top, but you can tell it was obviously taken from like Galaxy Warriors or one of those toy lines because of the way the hands and the cufflinks are done here, or like the little gauntlets. All the sort of like underwear thing looks like feathers and like some sort of weird, like almost like mud that's been like chunked up on their bodies. They're just kind of strange. I ended up picking these up because this one to me looks like Matrix from Commando, so Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I'm sure is what they were going for. And this one reminded me a little bit of one of Stallone's characters. I can't remember if it was Cobra or not, but I can't remember. But they reminded me of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, so I was like, I'm gonna pick them up. Each one of these that I know of did come with pants. They did come with a like gi or a top, and then they had like a wrap belt, and I believe they had 2 accessories, either a spear or a sword, and maybe they were all spears and swords. But again, packaging and finding extra information on these, it's a little tough because they're not that the figures are rare, but the other parts are. This is my one cheat in my lineup here. This one did not take place in the 80s. However, it was molded from a toy that was molded in the 80s. This was a reissue that came out in 1992 from a manufacturer called Toys and Things, and the toy line was called Troll Force. Keep in mind, they were supposed to all have hair, right? Alright, now these guys have an interesting history. Well, I say interesting, it's not really that interesting. These Toys and Things was a company that came around in 1992. So this was after He-Man was pretty much gone from the focus, but Trolls started making a comeback. And so in order to kind of cash in on it, they used the He-Man type knockoff body from another line, probably like Warriors or something, to create Trolls. Now this is Mighty Man, and Mighty Man, he came accessory wise with it was like a piece that went over his top that had an emblem, and he had a blue cape, and he had, I think it was like trolley like red hair. Now all of his hair fell out. There were a few strands left when I first got him, but I have been on the way of mending him up to one day get him completely put back together. But that means I need his chest plate and his cape. Now, Android Man, on the other hand, I've been working on trying to restore and refurbish his hair, but he came, I believe, with a bandolier and a type of silver missile launcher. And it's interesting because it's all a black suit, and of course they got the painted arm pieces here, so we know that's where his shirt ends here and here. but he still has the belt and the loincloth and the boots. And they've even gone to paint some of the metal pieces on his arm here and here. So it's like, instead of sculpting it, it's all just paint application in order to make it look the part. There were also a ton of different ones. There's wrestlers. There's one called the Yuck Man that actually looks like the Incredible Hulk. I mean, it's weird that they didn't get a cease and desist for some of the copyright issues they were getting, including like Terminator, Superman, and the Incredible Hulk. So yeah, that was a very interesting line. All right, so my number 3 in the line, kind of middle of the road here. This is from 1982. This is actually from the manufacturer Remco. And this was kind of in relation to what He-Man was doing. This was their kind of way of fighting back to try to get that muscle-bound sort of money at the time. And that is Lost World of the Warlord. All right, from 1982, Remco Toys. Now, we know Remco Toys is one of those toy lines that really kind of picked up. It would see what was in the market and kind of make their own thing. And what was interesting was that this particular line of toys was the toy line that Mattel went to sue on, because they said that the muscle body was their idea, and they basically lost in court because, you know, a bodybuilder type body couldn't be a trademarked idea in court itself. So it was interesting because the Warlord, or the Lost Worlds of Warlord, which is Warlord this character and a Rock this character, this is the line that started the big muscle craze for what we thought of as knockoff Masters of the Universe toys. And this particular toy line is what Mattel took to court to basically sue Remco for trying to steal their idea. And it was a very interesting part in history. I dig it so much. Now, I know that there's a few accessories on there that I'm missing. He actually came with a sword and a couple wings on his helmet. And then he had this kind of zebra sort of print cape that went on. So they all had soft goods. A Rock had a knife, a tomahawk, and he had a leather type belt that went on him. And each one of the Lost World of the Warlords action figures came with a soft goods piece and at least one either large accessory or 2 small accessories. All right, getting closer to that number 1 state here. We're actually on our number 2, and this actually comes from 1984. Now, the initial part of the line started in 1983, but the ones I have were the Laser Light collection that came out in 1984. Toy manufacturer Galoob. The toy line was Black Star. So what's weird with this particular toy line from Galoob is this. The cartoon came out in 1981 and apparently was inspired by Thundar the Barbarian, which is one of my favorite cartoons to watch. This, however, was weird because the toy line didn't come out until 1984, even though the cartoon had been out in 1981. And the cartoon only ran for 13 episodes, and then that was it. Out of the Black Star series from Galoob, we had ended up having like 2 waves of figures. And out of the 2 waves, there were a series of standard figures, and then there were some that had these sparking chests, which were light up features. Now, growing up, I had the Overlord, which is one of my favorite figures. It's one I've been trying to get in my collection for years now. He had a glow-in-the-dark sword, and he had this like clip on his back that you would hit this and it would make his chest spark. Now this one he's out of. However, they did put this nice little piece on the back where you can exchange the flint and put new flint in there. Now this is a Neptune, and this is Tonga, the Tiger Man. And of course he has a flint that works there, so when you look at that, that's right. He strikes a match thingy inside and sparks up. Now, these guys actually came with it was like a glow-in-the-dark weapon that went with them, and that was pretty much it. Some actually had capes that would clip onto their back. These guys, they didn't need to have too much. And I always liked Black Star because I thought that the look of them were great in the way that they had the heads meshed in with the arms. But if you look, These are essentially the same legs and same arms for each one, and they were known for reusing a lot of parts and just changing up heads and torsos to make each character unique. Alright, toy fans, so we're down to really our number one, the last one, the top of my list of the figures I have in my collection, which I really, really dig. Now, I've got one from one year and one from the other. So there were 2 waves that came out, and they were broken down in teams. You had Cyborg team, Ground team, Flight team, Explorer team, and then a Ranger team. The Explorer and the Ranger team, they came out in 1986. The others came out in 1985. So it was kind of a weird toy line. They came with a ton of accessories. The actual toy manufacturer is Pace Toys, and the toy line is Earth Force. Alright, and then coming in from 1985 and of course 1986. This was actually made by Pace Toys, and it's Earth Force, which was Earth's finest, I guess, heroes. Now, when I talked about the different teams and stuff, in the 1985 versions of these, you had multiple teams. You had a Cyborg team, you had a Flight team, you had a Ground team, and that was it. In 1986, this is when you got the Star Rangers and you got the Explorer team, and they had changed up some of the look. A lot of these from the 1985 release, their kind of color themes are like yellow, blue, silver, white. They're very bright like this, and kind of what you think of as like American or like superhero-esque. And then they changed a little bit in 1986 to have more greens, whites, and then you have the Star Rangers that came along towards the end of the line that were done in military green. Now, this is Cherokee from the Cyborg team, and let's take a look at him. He's chocked full of stuff. What was so cool about this line is they actually had a ton of removable parts. So they had like weapon sets, like this team, they had everyone had a shield, they had a hand blaster, they had a rifle, they had boots, and then they also had this 2-plated armor that would snap together with these little guides on top for you to have armor sets for them. So they'd have helmets, boots, weapons, shields. I mean, they are chock full of accessories. 1986, they kind of pared that down just a little bit. This is from the Star Rangers. I think his name is Major Nigel Bart of the Star Rangers. And of course, he had boots, he had a helmet, and it would kind of flop around. It wasn't too spectacular. Then he had this like machine gun that would plug into his chest. He had this backpack piece that was like a rocket pack. And then he had his armor that came off in 2 pieces. And then there was him in his fatigues. And I think that's a really cool set. One of the reasons why this is my number one is because I have both of them completed. And it's kind of a rare thing to get these things completed when you do. So mine, I had to kind of piece together and buy a lot of parts that I found either at conventions or on websites. So they're kind of rare in that you don't really see them that often, but if you find one that's on card or complete, you're going to be paying up in the hundreds for them, which makes these actually really kind of rare, really cool. It makes me feel kind of proud that I have them complete, so I can kind of brag about it. Alright, so that's my top 5. I think they're pretty cool. You know, I'd really want to know your opinion. Be sure to tell me in the comments which one you liked the most, which one you thought was pretty cool. Maybe even give me your top 5 of your He-Man-like action figures from the 80s and 90s that's in your collection, and be sure to share with me because I love talking back with you all. That's all I gotta say about these toys today. Remember, they're not dolls. In this case, they're muscled up action figures. Urgh. When I'm not recording videos here on YouTube, I'm actually over on a podcast on marvindogmedia.com called Talking Toys with Taylor and Jeff. It's a really cool toy podcast. Be sure to check it out. Also, I need your help getting my YouTube channel to grow. Be sure to subscribe down below with that big red button. Hit that bell for notifications so you can be alerted of anything that comes from me to you. Like this video, it helps YouTube know that you like what I'm making, and comment down below. I like chatting with you all.